Welcome to my little slice of the tropics. This is my greenhouse. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to protect some of your plants during the winter. We live in North Florida and we do get winter here. It's not terrible like it is up north in Tennessee or heaven forbid the Midwest, but it does get cold here, and we see overnight lows sometimes into the teens. About 2.5 years ago I bought this greenhouse for $500, and this is where I keep a lot of my tropical stuff alive through the winter. We just had a night with overnight lows in the low 20s, and everything in here is fine. You can see I've got starfruit, bananas, cassava, tea, avocados, bananas, all that kind of stuff. This is the drop dead simple way to protect your plants, but this costs money, and you may not want to do this if you don't keep a whole ton of plants. You'll notice in here I've got barrels, these big blue barrels. See if you can see those well. Yeah, you can see those. There are 8 of these barrels, and they are filled with water up to the top. This provides thermal mass. I noticed when I first set this up, it would get really hot during the day, and overnight it would get really cold. Despite the fact that it was protected from the worst of the cold, it wasn't enough. There was big swings happening inside of here. So I did a little reading on thermal mass, and I realized what I need is something that's going to hold the heat overnight. I don't need a heater in here. It gets down into the teens, like I said, and this stuff never freezes in here. And it's just these 8 barrels of water. During the day they hold some of the heat of the sun. Maybe they get down into the 60s or 70s, the water inside. I have no idea. But that water is enough to radiate out heat overnight and keep everything from freezing. And then on a really hot day, if I forget to open up this top here and let the air through, I find that I can go in here and it still doesn't get over the 90s. And previously it was getting up into the hundreds if I forgot to open it. So thermal mass. And talking about thermal mass, I'm going to show you something else. Alright, check this out. This is a key lime tree. In my area, key lime trees do not grow. If you grow this out in the middle of a field, or if you grow this out in your yard, this thing is toast. However, this is the south wall of my house, and as you can see, it's going into bloom right now, and it is the middle of January. I did a method here called espalier. I put these posts up, tied them back to the wall, and I tied the tree to these pieces of electrical conduit, and the tree keeps a plane up against the wall like this, which keeps it inside 2 or 3 feet out. I noticed after the first winter that I was here that some of the weeds and stuff next to the house would never freeze, and stuff a little further out would. I have about 2.5 feet out from the wall, and it remains basically zone 10, so we're talking like a Miami garden right here. So this plant, which could not stand it below 32, has gone through a 12-degree overnight and not had any problems. So this is another trick. The back of the house provides thermal mass, heats up during the day. At night it stays warm enough to protect the tree, plus the slight overhang of the roof also keeps it from the cold of space far above. So that's it, thermal mass. I'm going to show you something else next. What is this? Oh my goodness, what are these weird things? It looks like somebody made some rings out of fencing and then stuffed them full of straw. But inside these rings are my moringa trees. Moringa is a total tropical. It's not able to stand the cold at all. It's a very tough tree in some ways. It's very weak wood, but it grows really fast. And often in my area, what people will do is let their moringa trees freeze all the way to the ground, and then when spring comes, they will almost always come back from the roots. I like to have a lot more harvest a lot faster, and I like to keep the tree from that kind of stress level. So what I do is I chop the top of the tree off right before the first frost, put a ring of wire around them, stuff it full of straw, and that protects the moringa trees through the winter. And you can see this is a little bit of moringa tree sticking out right here. I basically keep a hedge of moringa trees and As soon as it warms up, these things are going to be fine again, and they will start growing out of these trunks. It's absolutely amazing that they can go through the entire winter without any leaves on top, just living on the reserves. And then when it starts to warm up, I pull these things off. I know there's not going to be any more frosts, sometime in March usually. Yank these off, spread the straw around, and the trees grow like crazy, and I am way ahead of the folks that let them freeze to the ground. Plus the trunks of the trees get bigger and bigger to a point where probably at some point in the future I'll be able to just leave them and there will be enough mass in the trunk itself that it doesn't freeze through. But the first year I was here, I let my moringas freeze, except for one that I tested with this, and I had a tree with a trunk about this big around, and it froze and the whole trunk just goes squish, worthless. Kills the whole tree all the way down to the ground. And then I had to wait for it to grow back again. It came back as a little twig from the ground and had to spend the whole season growing. This way you get a big jump and you get a lot more leaves. So this is one method you could do. You could probably use it on a variety of different tropical trees, provided they are able to take the extreme pruning and sit inside of the straw over the course of a winter. Well, you can see what I've done. I've covered over these trees with sheets, and it's really terrifying to be out here in the evening and see all of these strange cloaked and hooded distorted figures around the yard. If you're not used to it, you turn around and you see something like this behind you and you freak out. Oh my gosh, it's the phantom. It's the phantom citrus. Anyhow, the thrift store is the place to go for sheets. You can go and buy frost blankets and that kind of stuff, but just keeping it covered overnight. Another thing I do is, this one I didn't do it on, it looks like. There's just mulch underneath there. But often what I do is I take a area around the tree the night before it freezes and I clean it up so it's just bare sand, and that bare sand radiates heat upwards. I know they tell you to keep things mulched to keep the roots from freezing, but having the roots freeze is rarely a problem here in Florida, so instead you want the radiant heat of the ground to be coming up overnight during the very coldest parts, and then the blankets above will trap it. This tree is pretty close to the edge of an oak canopy, so it doesn't seem to get hit very hard by cold. But some of the trees that are further out, I cover. And the thrift store, man, freeze blankets might cost you 15 bucks a piece. These cost me $1 or $2 each at the thrift store, and they work just as well. And they're also attractive. You can get them in all kinds of colors and floral prints and stripes and even deep blue. So that's it, a little bit on how to protect your plants from frost. You can see I have an array of cloaked figures across my yard. Man, that's creepy. Looks like a KKK member over there.